Hi everybody, welcome back to my channel. Today I had this idea of doing something, well, going back to our roots, kind of. Going back to an exercise that I used to do a lot a few months ago, and then I started working on a different project which took pretty much all of my art making time. But now I feel like I want to do an exercise that is always super helpful for me, which is to redo a painting that I've already done, but this time in a different style or using different mediums. So this is what I want to do today. I'm going to paint a painting that I did in my Northern Landscape series, which is this one. I love it a lot. I think it's so cute. I want to do it again, but I want to do it in my sketchbook using my Neocolor tool only. I just want to see where it takes us. I don't want to plan it too much in advance. I just want to do it kind of like an intuitive painting, but with more of a direction. So that's what we're going to do. So I have my big set of Neocolor tools right here. I'm going to select some colors, I think, while painting. And I'm going to do this painting in my sketchbook, my Stillman and Burns mixed media sketchbook. I think it's going to be good in this sketchbook because the pages are very smooth. I might use both pages. I found that I've been liking that a lot in this sketchbook, especially now that it's a landscape. I think using a full spread is going to be prettier and more fun for me to do. So let's go. Let's not waste any more time and start working. So what I'm gonna do is I'm going to keep this not too far from me. Maybe I'll keep it right here on the side so you might not see it that much, but it's gonna be there for me. I have this cheap piece of watercolor paper that I'm going to use just to test out some colors if I need to, which I might not, we'll see. I have my Neocolor tools here. This I'm going to keep under here, and let's just find a page. I have some paper towels just in case I need to clean my brush later on. First, I think I want to start with doing a sketch. So I'm going to zoom you in and we're going to start on that. Okay, so usually for my sketches, I like to select a pale color that won't show up if I put more color on top. So I'm thinking I could use this apricot color. What I want to start with, I think, is just place the horizon line. So I'm just going to go quickly like this. In this series, I've been liking a small amount of sky, and most of it is foreground. I know that this is not typical, let's say. Usually you prefer a third, or this is not how you would do a composition, but this is how I've been liking to do my stuff lately. Okay, so there's also, as you can see, there's a little house here. So I did this line, then I'm gonna place the house, and then the horizon is gonna continue. It needs to be pretty straight. I don't even know if it's straight, to be honest. Okay, and we're gonna fix it later, but I think it's going to be the approximate shape of the house. And then let's continue the horizon line. But behind the house there's a mountain, so we're just going to place the mountain shape. I just want to make this line disappear because I don't want it to be too confusing. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to take some water, take a brush, and just apply the water and like this. This technique I find works better on watercolor paper, but that's okay. You have to make sure that your brush is really clean. Otherwise you might spread some colors that you don't want to spread. And yeah, on paper that is not very good quality, you can damage it. Okay, so I'm going to continue to do the sketch and I'll come back later because I don't think you can see that much, but I'm just gonna show you. This is what I did so far. Okay, I'll be back. Okay, I'm done. So let me show you a close-up of the sketch. Just some faint lines, so I know where to place everything. Okay, so I think what I'm gonna start with is the sky. I think I'm going to mix some colors on there, and then with a paintbrush, I'm going to wet everything and create this beautiful sky. So I want a sky that is a bit, it has a bit of a green tinge, like slightly turquoise, but still blue. So I just want to test some colors. By the way, I'm using some new brushes. I was gifted a set of 12 brushes from the brand Artify. So these are nylon brushes. So I'm trying them for the first time pretty much. This one is completely new. So we have a few brushes from them. Most of them are round and pointy, but some of them are flat. I think there's, this one is called the cat tongue, I think. Yeah, and a bunch of brushes that are gonna be really cool for detail. So I think for the roof, it's gonna be great. So I'm gonna start with my biggest one, maybe this big flat one also. Let's try this one first. So it's pretty blue. I think we could add something else. This is turquoise blue. Let's try this one. This is turquoise green. I think turquoise green is going to be closer to what we're looking for. Yeah, I like this one. So I think I'm gonna do this. And what if I add like some areas that are a bit lighter blue and maybe mix? Yeah, I like that. So that's what we're gonna do. A mix of turquoise green and this light cobalt blue. As you see, I'm going pretty fast. Just gonna be careful with that roof, that house over there. And then I'm gonna add some lighter blue in some areas. I always like to start with the sky. I don't know, it feels like one color is done, one color is added, and then it inspires me to do the rest. So I'm gonna wet my brush and just go over. I don't mind if I go over the lines of my sketch, because with Neocolor too, it's easy to put more color on top. And also the mountains in the background, they're darker than the sky. So if I go over the lines a little bit, it's okay. It's not gonna change anything. And I like this kind of texture. It feels like a cloudy sky, which it is. So I like that. So far this brush is pretty good. I feel like my worry was that since it's synthetic, I wasn't sure if it would hold a lot of water or not. And it does, so pretty pleased with these. This is not a sponsored review, by the way. They haven't asked me to do a video. I just said that I would mention these brushes because I'm using them, so might as well mention them and tell you what I think quickly. But they just asked me to do a reel, so I'm gonna post a reel later. But yeah, this is not a paid review. Okay, so the sky is done. Another thing worth mentioning, I think, is that what I'm gonna do this time is that I'm gonna keep all the colors that I'm using aside. So I will keep the color palette that I'm using somewhat limited. So now what I want to do is work on the mountains. I'm gonna work on this range here. I think I'm gonna use that turquoise again, but I want it to be a bit more brown. So I want to mix it with, could mix it with cinnamon. I think it would be pretty nice. Or I could mix it with English red. Let's try that. Let's see what happens. For this part, I think I'm going to use a brush directly on the pastel. I'm splashing my color a little bit on my page, but it's okay. And then let's do the same with the English red. And we can create a mix on the paper directly. This fine point is so good to create these little details. That allows me to be more precise. So I'm gonna go back and forth with the same two colors. And I'm gonna do that until I'm satisfied with the color, which I think we're pretty close. I just wanted to add a little bit more blue in there. So we're finished with this part. So what I'm gonna do, I think, is I'm going to mix a color. I'm gonna use this palette. So what if we mix this turquoise green with a bit of orange? Yeah, I think that would be good. Yeah, let's do that. I'm gonna put some orange in here. My pan is not 100% clean, but that's okay. And then I'm gonna do the same with this one. Creating this kind of olive / dirty green. Since I think it's the first time I'm using this orange, it's a bit harder to get the color from the tip. So I think it's because the exterior has a bit of a waxy surface that we need to break through. Well, that's why I'm drawing directly on it. Okay, so I like this green. Let's paint with it now. It goes on so well, and I can cover my sketch without it showing through, so it's great. I think what I'm gonna do is add some water in some areas, so I have some lighter areas and then some areas are gonna be a bit darker, just to add a bit of dimension. Okay, and now I'd like to add, I think, some areas of turquoise. And also some parts have a bit of blue popping. Okay, now what I want to do is use a bit of this green that I mixed in some other areas of this image. And I might cover this color up later, maybe completely or partially, maybe some color, some green is gonna pop through. I'm hoping the repetition of this color is gonna make this painting a bit more cohesive. Okay, and now I'm going to work on this mountain range behind the house. This one is a bit darker. This one has an interesting orange in it, so I think we're gonna reuse this orange, this light fast orange. And we're gonna use maybe a brown, our darkest color pretty much. So let's select it now. Maybe umber would be good. I think umber would be a good dark color. Yeah, I like it. It has kind of a greenish tint to it, so we're gonna use that to our advantage. I think first what we're gonna do is we're just gonna paint the areas where we need to be super precise. So everything that is surrounding the house I'm going to paint, but the rest I really wanted to draw it in. We have some different layers to the mountain, so I'm gonna draw all our layers. We have one that goes like this, and then this furthest part is a bit darker and there's less color variation, so I'm just going to draw it in real quick. Then here we have two hills, so one that goes in this direction and then the other one goes like this, a bit up. Yeah, let's add some orange now. There's some areas where I'm gonna mix that brown with the orange. Some areas that are gonna be a bit more orange, like pure orange. And some areas that are gonna remain brown. We're gonna use a brush and wet everything. I have to be careful with these brushes because they accumulate a lot of water, which is good, but also when you're not expecting it, then you get too much water on your paper and this might not be what you want. Okay, so now what I want to do is reuse this umber, which we decided was going to be our darkest color, and just add some dark areas here and there where I think that we need it. this part here is the most precise part. So when we're done with this area, then in here we can be loose, we can do big movements, we can mix the colors together, it's gonna be fine. Also, doing these darker areas really helps me to remember my main placements. Now I did some lines, but it's easy for me to forget when it's just a bunch of lines which colors go where. So now I'm placing some areas that are gonna help me define some boundaries and remember what colors to put where. I don't know if I'm clear, but I like to do that whenever I start a painting, and I know that I can get confused easily because it's just a bunch of lines. Then I take one color and I just place some shapes here and there, and it really helps me out. So sometimes when there's a bunch of things that could look like rocks, I'm going to go around the shapes that I know are rocks, and then the rest I know they're not, and I can move on from there a bit easier. This is the side of the path, so I'm just going to add the line of shade here. I'm probably gonna go back in and mix this umber with other colors like greens, but I'm just placing, as I said, some areas quickly first. So now I think we're going to work on this area, another area where we need to be a bit more precise, and then we'll move on to the fun stuff. I can't wait to do these bright reds. This is the best part, and the bright yellows, so good. But now what I want is like an olive color. We probably have one already. Here we have two contenders. We have dark olive and we have olive brown. I think I'm gonna go with the dark olive. I might add a bit of orange in there. Okay, so I'm just gonna draw it in, I think. Okay, now what I want to do is I want to do this part here, which is going to be more yellow, more ochre. So I think we're going to use this one, this golden ochre. I'm going to use this golden yellow also. I think these three colors will go well together. So let's start. And now I'm trying to mix some of the colors I use in this mountain here, just so I get a more interesting mix. Now we're gonna add the water and mix it all together. I want to start with this more delicate part here, so I'm gonna use the smaller brush I was using earlier, just to go into these smaller areas where precision is needed. Also, there's a path here, so I need to be a bit more precise in this path area because it's very small, especially near the top. I need to be careful. I'll switch to a bigger brush. Okay, now I want to place the rocks. Like I told you, I usually do. I think now would be a good time for that. So I'm going to select a light pink. We'll go with salmon pink. And what I do is I just go around the rocks. I color in some areas. So now I know that this is a rock. There's another big rock here as well. Then all of these, there are small rocks, or maybe they're not that small, but they're in the distance, so they look smaller, so I'm just gonna trace them. And there's another one, a big one here. And what I like to do is also do the path in pink. I'm just going to lightly draw some areas of the path. I have to be a bit more careful in that area because the path gets thinner. It can be quite hard to draw precisely with these, so sometimes I like to use my paintbrush, a fine paintbrush, as you've seen, and I'm considering doing it now, but we'll see if we get there. So this is one side, then the other side. So it's kind of a dirt road, in fact. So you see the tire tracks. Let me use a little paintbrush. I'm gonna use a very tiny one just to paint this area right here. And there's another area here which I'm guessing is a bit rockier, so let's draw it in pink. Now let's add some blue to signify the shadows. Now I think we should work on this background here. So what I want to do is maybe mix these colors that I've already put in. So we see a bit more green. So I think I'm going to mix this turquoise here with some orange or bright yellows to create a brighter color. Adding some olive green as well. I'm gonna work on this area also. I just want to be careful in this part. So I'm quite satisfied with this green that I got. With Neocolor tools, when you mix like I just did, directly on paper, you never know what color you're gonna get before you start adding the water. So it's always a gamble, but for me it's a gamble that I like taking because that's how you get nice surprises, that's how you learn about mixing. So it's always fun. Okay, now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna start working on this area. So I have selected my bright red/orange, which is gonna be vermilion. I'm going to use these colors again. And I also want a deeper rust color. Well, I have this English red, so I'm gonna use this also. And we're just gonna add some colors here and there, and then we'll see what we get. We'll see when we add the water. So I really wanna start with this bright orange because I've been waiting to apply this color. It's so nice. I also want to add some darker areas just to add a bit of shadows and dimension. So I don't know if you've been following my Nordic landscape series, but I'm working in a similar way. So I'm applying the colors. Well, first I start with the background like what I did. Usually I do that with watercolor, and then with my watercolor pencils I'm gonna start working like I'm doing now. So adding some colors in this kind of blob-like way. So all the shapes are very defined because it's a tundra landscape. So the vegetation is quite close to the ground. It's comprised of like small bushes. So I want to recreate this feel, you know. So I'm mixing my colors directly on my paper. When I add the water, then I'll see what kind of mix I'm getting. So that's why I'm kind of working the same way as I'm doing with my series, my official series, but I wanted to see what we get when we do the same process, but with Neocolor tools, and what kind of end result we get, what kind of look we get. This took me barely any time, just because now I don't have to be as careful anymore, so I can just, let loose, act quickly, and then that's it. You just have to be careful in some areas, like here, I don't want to go over the rock, but other than that, you can just really, let go and enjoy the process. It's pretty intuitive. Okay, and then in here, we're gonna be careful. I think I'm not gonna do the inside here too much because I'll be able to get the color from other places in the page and just use my brush to color this little area here. Now I'm gonna move on here. I'm going to do this part quickly. It should be even quicker than this one because we have the path that takes a big portion of the page. Let me just put this here. I thought it was pretty useful to have a blank page of paper, just so I don't have to worry about drawing over the side of the book, which wouldn't be a problem really. It's just I don't really feel like doing that, so this is a good way to prevent that from happening. When I add the first layer of water and it's dried, I'm gonna go over top to add some grass-like texture. But for now, I'm gonna keep everything constrained to their designated areas just for now. So see how quickly this is going? This area doesn't have as many defined shapes as this one. Maybe it's part of the reason why it's going a bit faster. I can just mix all of my colors together without really having to be careful. Okay, so I quickly finished the first layer of Neocolor 2. It went really well. Now what I would like to do is start adding some water, and I think I'm going to start with the lightest areas first, just to keep my brush clean as much as possible. I'm looking at the brushes I have. I think this one is still the most appropriate, is the biggest. I think that I like, but also is a bit difficult for me with these brushes, is that they're so pointy, which is great to do the tiniest details, but when you want to go fast, the tip is too pointy and I'm kind of scared to go over some lines compared to, let's see, this brush, which I use the most usually. You see, it's not as pointy. It gives you a different effect, so I'm more used to this one, but this one also has advantages. I guess need to get used to it, but also I could decide to work with this one in some specific cases and then work with that one and just interchange them. So I think it's good to have this one also. So let's start with the lightest areas first. I think I want to start with the rocks. So I'm gonna move the paint around, well, move the Neocolor 2 around, so I get some areas that are a bit more pink, some that are blue. I'm gonna go back over them when they're dried with maybe some darker colors, just to increase the contrast in the rocks and make sure that the shady areas are better defined. And then I'm gonna go and do the same with this path, trying to keep it a bit lighter in the middle and more colorful around the edges. Now I'm gonna start working on the colors. I think I'm going to do the same thing, starting with the lightest shades first. So I'm going to start with my yellows, and then I go around and I mix it. So I'm working one area at a time, starting with the lightest part of that area and then working my way around it and incorporating the darkest shades that I put all around it. One thing to note with Neocolor 2s is that they don't really move around that much, so they're not going to spread. If I connect two wet areas together, they're not going to bleed into one another. They're pretty much going to remain where they are. I think maybe if I added a lot of water, then maybe they would bleed around, but even then I'm not very sure. So it's pretty safe. You don't really have to wait until an area is dry before you work on the next, but I would still wait if you really don't want the paint to mix. Like let's say in the sky, I would wait until I'm sure it's dry before I worked on this part, just in case the paint moves. I really don't want to mess up that sky, but the rest, I'm not too precious about it, so I don't have to be as careful. And as you see, it kind of goes pretty fast from now on. I can just mix my colors together and relax. This part is very relaxing. So sometimes I make sure my brush is really clean when I don't want the colors to mix or when I want to keep a pure color, but sometimes I don't really bother with cleaning my brush. Like here, I had a clean brush, I did this section, and then I went straight into this one. So I kind of mixed this color that was already there with the color that was on my brush. So it kind of created a even more interesting color. So sometimes it's something that I do. I don't always have to make sure my brush is clean. It depends on what I'm trying to achieve. First page is done. Now let's move on to this one. And then when we wait for it all to dry, I think we're gonna move on to this little house. Now the last area is this one. And it's gonna be fun because all the colors are blending together. Here's what it looks like after finishing the first layer. I'm going to work a little bit on the house. So I'm just going to do two simple colors, one for the roof and one for the house. I'm just gonna go in with this color, but I'm gonna use my brush to be very precise. Let me in fact use a smaller brush. Okay, this is quite difficult because this brush is too pointy. The last hair on it is like one single hair and it's very hard to control. I'm not able to do sharp corners because of that. I don't think this set is good for all purposes. I definitely need other brushes to go along with it. I think I'm going to finish off with my other brush that I like. This is a Raphael. You see the top? It's not just one hair, so it's easier to do more precise corners. I don't know if you can see. Anyway, I don't remember. I think on the original, maybe I drew the roof. It's possible that that's what I did, just to be extra precise. Okay, so now I'm going to add some final details. I think I'm gonna go back in with this blue and add some texture to these rocks. Maybe I'm gonna use this turquoise again. I think it's pretty cool. Interesting color. Then defining these background rocks a bit more. And then I want to add some details here. Then I'm adding some final details just so it looks like there's grass, you know, so textures like this. Still, I'm going very fast. I am not taking my time at all. This is what we've done today. It's so cute. I love it. And this is the original we based our picture on. This one has a bit more texture, like you can feel like this is a bit more grassy compared to this one where it's more like blobs. So this is a bit less realistic than this one, but it's so cool. It's such a nice study. It was so fun. I feel like the colors here pop a bit more, but I think that I learned from this one. I took the colors that I liked the most and I put them in this one. I did not mix colors as much. The colors were a bit purer. But that's it. I hope you enjoyed this video. Let me know what you thought. And let me know if you want more videos like this, more videos using my Neocolor tool. And otherwise, I will see you soon. Bye. Take care.